This is the SaaS Playbook, where we break down how founders and operators build modern revenue systems, what's changed in the B2B go-to-market, and what's actually working in a world where attention is the real bottleneck. Today's episode is brought to you by Hera Digital, helping founders build predictable sales engines and smarter revenue systems. If you want someone to reach out to you, comment system down below, and somebody will do so. Today, I'm joined by Todd Sawicki, founder of Gumshoe AI, a platform helping brands understand what AI search and AI answers say about them and what to do about that information. Todd, it's great to have you here today.
Glad to be here. And it's amazing to be talking about SaaS. This is not the first SaaS startup I'm doing. The landscape has changed so much in the last 3 to 4 months as we were talking. I'm astounded at how big of a change happened, how fast from you, because you and I first started talking before the New Year's. And since then, like the rise of things like, OpenClaw have, I think, radically changed what it means to build a SaaS business now. It's crazy what's going on.
It's almost like how fast can you keep up, really? How fast can you GTM? Because if you don't get out there fast enough with at least a skeleton product, you're probably going to get, outmarketed quite quickly, which is perfect opportunity for where Gumshoe sort of slides into that domain. But, you've been building SaaS for years. What's the biggest change you've seen in GTM over the last 5 years alone?
So let's go back 10 years ago, and right, because I think 5 years is like the beginning of the pandemic, and that's a big change point. But prior to that, enterprise sales was about getting on a plane and building an expensive sales team with, like, go back 10, 12 years was really the rise of BDRs and outbound motions. And, in terms of that role, right? You had a team of BDRs who would be setting up meetings, and then people would get on a plane and you go meet with someone. Like, I used to spend 12 out of 13 weeks a quarter on the road. Like, I'm a million miler on a couple of airlines and I'm flying around the world, right? It's to do that. And then that goes back 10 years is like the rise of the BDR, setting up meetings, automated motions, right? You see software packages like Outreach and SalesLoft and what have you with the rise of the outbound motions around BDRs. And then, and we get into SQLs and MQLs and things like that, where it's all about lead gen and for setting meetings. But the pandemic, and at the same time, Zoom launches pre-pandemic, right? 2015, 2016. I remember when my team brought Zoom to me for the first time. And prior to that, we'd been kind of using Google Meet, and you play with things like Skype, really dating myself, and some other, GoToMeet and things like that. And I remember, Zoom showing up and being a pretty radical improvement in web conferencing. Again, this is like 2016, 2017, 2018. But even then, like, you could scheduling people to do what we now affectionately refer to as Zoom calls, like, just never happened. You had to do it. Like, no one would do anything but in person. And then the pandemic hits, and obviously we're not meeting in person. We're not traveling anymore. And the world changes pretty quickly to, all right, I'm willing to do Zoom calls now, to a point today, no one wants to meet in person. It is impossible to get someone to meet in person. Like, I could be in the city. I could like have their personal cell. I could be texting them and be like, hey, do you want to get together? Like, no, I'm sorry, I'm busy. No one wants to meet anymore for sales. And I think that changes the GTM, at least the enterprise motion, pretty radically to where it's not about traveling anymore. It's about what can you do over a Zoom call and a demo. And so I think that changes things pretty dramatically. Like, seeing that shift over the last 10 years with Gumshoe, with Gumshoe, as a result of this change, we purposely tried to build a more PLG product, which refers to product-led growth, which really is a fancy way of saying self-serve, because of the challenge of now scheduling Zoom calls, because now it's so easy to get things right scheduled. People are getting inbound requests for just a million meetings, and it's hard to get people to respond now because we've flooded their inboxes. There's so many people trying to get those meetings. And so I think kind of what is old is new, meaning we used to try to build PLG self-serve type motions, and then enterprise took off and we did that for a decade. And then now that it's kind of coming full circle, it's so much harder to build anything that's outbound, A, because no one wants to do meetings, and B, because it's now just Zoom calls and it's easy to send an automated email. How many inboxes of your targets, of your prospects, are just flooded in a way that you can't get any attention? Because if you're sending them an email, your 100 competitors are. So it's I think that change in that arc is really, and now you throw in AI and what's going to happen with AI, like, Jesus, God knows what's going to happen now. Like that just changes it again. But just the whole 10 years of change has been fascinating to watch as a result.
A few points to unpack there, but just quickly touching post pandemic, I think Zoom shares skyrocketed through the roof, right? Which is something the pandemic did one or two things. It really depleted your business or really grow. There was no in between. And I agree, especially from a sales perspective. You have to really hone in on what your message is, and you have to be more direct. But also, email platforms have now found a way to filter out all that spam and all that traffic, which is great from a security perspective, but hard for trying to reach someone to contact and have a direct conversation with because we're just so fatigued, right? How do you sort of find a way to pierce through the noise? And you can't get them on the phone anymore either. You can't get them on email. How do you put yourself in a position where you can be in front of the decision makers?
It is. I joke with this with other founders that being a good outbound salesperson these days, enterprise salesperson, you almost have to be like a catfisher, right? The dating term, right? Because you have to almost like trick people to pick up your calls or respond to your email. Like if you're good at, like if you would be a good catfisher, you'd be a good enterprise salesperson. Because you get people to respond, you get people to pick up, you get people to engage with you, right? If you joke, you're smiling, but yeah, it's kind of like we've gotten to that point where it's so hard to get people's attention. So I think to your point, it's a great question about what can you do? And honestly, I think the recommendation is you almost have to try anything and everything till something works for you and your business. Don't be shy because, oh, someone says you shouldn't do that. You should try it. Like for instance, I think, nowadays it's can you find someone in some community where they're interacting with, which is, could it be a Reddit community? Could it be a Discord community? WhatsApp, right? Internationally. And so you're going to have to find means probably outside the inbox and figure out a way to get someone to respond and be okay with you contacting them through these other channels. And so like I've got plenty of conversations through Reddit DMs, through LinkedIn DMs, through Discord. I'm not kidding about WhatsApp. By the way, there's tons of WhatsApp groups, Slack groups. And so there's lots of communities like in terms of on platforms, whether it's Slack, whether it is Discord, or whether it's WhatsApp. And I think those are great ways where you can find people where they're interacting. Now, does that mean I can go jump into one of these places where these people are hanging out, a prospect, and just attack them? No, you have to build it's like there's a patient game, I think, here a little bit where you have to ingratiate yourself to a community. And then if you develop and do that, you can then leverage that into the opportunity to get someone to respond, to take a meeting, take a call, jump on Zoom or whatever it is. And so I think it's much more of a detective game than it ever was.
It's funny because you're not the first person who's actually said that on the podcast, that basically trying to get in front of the right people is like a dating game, but also if you boil it down, business is like a dating game. You send a call to email, that's just like, hey, just sliding into your DMs essentially.
It is. Absolutely. Yes, you're sliding into the DMs to get a meeting. Absolutely. Not a date, but a meeting is about the hardest, just as hard to get, for sure.
And it's funny because you have to be super creative in how to find where these people are hanging out in the first place, right? It's even more prudent now than ever to provide value first because people buy from emotion. Even though we're talking B2B, specifically, it's really P2P, person to person, because no matter what circumstance, no matter what it is that you're selling or offering, they will only buy from the person. So branding and sort of creative marketing has really taken a different direction because of AI. So it's something really interesting to see how the landscape has changed so dramatically and the outlier effects of that change and that rapid growth. And I don't know, I'm a bit more old school, Tom. I like long-term partnerships. I like, lots of touch and lots of conversations and not just helping you with one thing, but can I help you with any other things? Because that's the trust layer that I find that a lot of founders just not yearn for, prioritize over, say, the next person who's just going to offer you a service.
I think that's fair. I don't think you're being wrong in that it's so. I think you have to establish, to your point, a presence, some credibility with the community that your prospects are in. Because by the way, they all talk to each other, right? That's the other thing. You're right. It is like dating because it's like dating in a small town. Yes, that small town might be spread around the globe, but within an industry, within a category, people go company to company. They all kind of know each other. You can quickly, just like in a small town, if you're the jackass at the party, everyone's going to find out. And so I think in the sales, especially B2B, the more you are delivering value and helping your prospects and you develop a good reputation as someone who is authentic, credible, knowledgeable, forthcoming, that reputation will spread because people do ask, like, hey, I'm looking at this platform, looking at this, and like, oh, who are you talking to? Right? They often will ask who the rep is. And do you have a good reputation? I mean, the good or bad of that is if you have a bad reputation, it can go a long way to hurting you. So I think there is this element, like dating. You have to build your reputation and know that people you dated in the past are going to get referenced for the next one down the road.
I come from a smaller city, not a small town, but a small city. And we joke about it all the time is, if Perth is so small, but that's kind of the overlay and the frame of you need to be careful of your personal image now because it travels so fast. And B2B and brand marketing as a business is no different. It's the exact same thing because in any circumstance, one bad review can go a long way in a bad way, in the sense it will take you 10 times the amount of good reviews to overcome that one bad review, right? Because people buy on face value and all that sort of fun stuff now. So we have to be super careful, sort of moving forward and operate with integrity and trust.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you recently raised capital and mentioned taking a more measured approach to hiring because of AI. How are you thinking about building a sales team today versus in previous startups?
So it's interesting because we're to your point. So Gumshoe, we've raised a few $1 million, right? We just closed our seed round, bring out our total funding. I think it'll be around 6 million total. And in a normal prior past, that would mean you're hiring, director of VP of sales, you're hiring a couple of senior AEs, you're hiring a couple of BDRs, a couple of people under customer success. Like that's an 8 to 10 person team. And at somewhere probably let's say 150,000 US ahead, that's $1.5 million a year in expense, pretty significant. So your raise goes pretty quickly out the door, in terms of what it cost you. And from a GTM standpoint, at Gumshoe, we have, our CRO or VPS. We just hired, our first BDM, and we have one customer success person. So and I don't feel like we're going to hire more from that. So instead of hiring, let's say 8 to 10, we have 3. And what we're doing is we're investing in building out agentic tooling around them because it's not clear that you need as many people as you once did because a lot of the busy work of sales can now be offloaded to whether it's OpenClaw, whatever it is, Claude Cowork, it's Perplexity announced something this week. Perplexity Computer, OpenAI is rolling out. They bought OpenClaw, and so you're going to find a lot of these orchestration tools. And so your ability to, I think, offload the grunt work of sales to AI is absolutely here and now. And it means your salespeople can really focus on the value add, which is like this conversation. Can they engage with a customer, and are they doing the things that really help move a deal to close versus the busy work that often was a large part of selling? Like, think about your CRM system. You don't have to automate, like that's all automated on its own. The bots read your email, they file everything. The forecast tools are all done automatically. So thank God all this tooling and agentic solutions, which just took wind really November, December of last year, happened before we were ready to go hire a bunch of people because I don't think we're going to need to. It radically reduces what you need in terms of building an enterprise sales team. Like it's unbelievable. Because I think if you were building a SaaS business before a SaaS startup, you'd have to raise, fine, you raise like we did 5, 6 as your starting point. That gets you to your first 20 people. Then you got to raise 10 to 15 as you're trying to build from 20 to 50 or higher. And that's largely GTM headcount. I think we're going to be hiring 20 to 30% of what we used to for forever. I don't think that changes.
I think there's a few ways to sort of look at it. Is sales, I think typically prior to AI, we thought that volume is key in sales. And it is. I'm not saying that it isn't. But what AI does, it handles the volume so that the sales team can physically handle more of the stuff that AI cannot synthesize yet. And I don't think it would. Not at this point in time. Who knows? It'll probably change next month. But like you said, it's the administrative stuff that doesn't really help drive the deal forward. The CRM thing, right? So when I was in corporate sales, the biggest headache was updating CRM.
Oh, it's the worst. Updating CRMs is the bane of anyone on the sales side exist. All the way up to right as a founder, CEO myself, like I'm the output, I get that data fed to me, but I know it's a pain in the ass. Like nobody likes it. It's the worst.
If you like CRM updates and keeping CRM clean in terms of hygiene, you're probably not a good salesperson because you're focused on the admin stuff, right?
Yes, exactly. Your Rain Man is what you are.
Yeah, and there's this weird, it just must be the way that sales brains are wired, where we're so good at conversations, closing deals, moving the deal forward, but not good at admin. And I don't know what it is, psychologically speaking, but it just happens to be those kind of people that are really great salespeople. I don't know. Someone should look into those psychosciences because it definitely needs to be studied.
I think it's because you have to be an extrovert to be good at that part of sales. A good seller is truly a hunter, right? It is because it's the chase, it's connecting dots. It is honestly, I have the most respect for really good enterprise salespeople. Like it's a miracle any large complex deal gets closed with a customer. Honestly, it is insanely difficult to coordinate people like half dozen, a dozen people to agree and sign off on a deal, right? Conflicting priorities, conflicting budgets and authorizations. And so to go from A to B to C to whatever it is, like it's a marathon and no two companies are alike. And so it is just the most amount of respect for people who can get these deals across the finish line because it truly is a miracle in a lot of ways. And so I think it's they like the chase. They like that aspect of going from A to B and seeing how they figure that out when there's no obvious path lit up for them. And so it's the adrenaline rush, I think, is why. And then the admin side is the definitely not the adrenaline rush side of it. And I think that's why.
So you're saying salespeople are adrenaline junkies, essentially, and we love the
The
chase.
good ones are, I think. It is, absolutely.
Okay, so going back a couple of steps, for someone hearing about Gumshoe for the very first time, what's the core problem you're solving and why is it becoming urgent in today's landscape?
For sure. Gumshoe helps as you said at the top of the hour, right? We help brands understand what AI search thinks about them, and then more importantly, what to do about it. Like, okay, I don't like where I'm showing up or I'm not showing up in AI answers, and how do I do bigger and better? And in a world where user behavior is shifting from traditional search to AI to discover, research, find out, and make purchase decisions. As a marketer, I need to make sure that I'm putting my best foot forward in this new channel. So it kind of starts with we help marketers solve the question of, am I showing up in AI answers or not? But it evolves to how do I manage AI effectively as a channel? And how do I direct it as much as I can so that it likes me and recommends me to and ultimately with the rise of agentic purchasing, is it going to be the platform that makes as many purchases of me versus my competitors? And so that's sort of the approach that we're taking is, again, how do we help brands? Because the analogy that we like to say is that the this is the best way to think about AI and AI search of your brand, which is, imagine you walk in, a person walks into a shoe store. And, we've all done this. And in shoe stores, they have that wall of shoes behind the salesperson. And when you walk in and you say, I need a new pair of shoes, the salesperson just doesn't turn around and pick a random pair of shoes and hand them to you. They ask questions. Are you here for dress shoes, casual shoes, hiking shoes, golf shoes, whatever it is? And in the traditional retail world, the brands came in and did trainings. Like Nike would come in one week and then Reebok would come in the next week and they do training sessions and explain why their shoes were better than their competitors and who are the target demographics for their shoes and what were the features and benefits of them. And in many ways, that physical salesperson is being replaced with the digital proxy, which we call AI or LLMs. And so as a marketer, you're going to have to train and manage LLMs no different than you did that salesperson in a store. And so because they're now your salesperson, when a user comes in and says, "Hey, I need a new pair of running shoes," and they recommend Hoka or Nike or whatever, well, if you as a brand owner, or brand manager, want to make sure you're the one represented, you're going to have to train the LLM. So we help then the brands understand, are they getting recommended or not, and then build the materials that'll ultimately get fed or crawled by the LLMs to teach them what to think about those products. So that's what Gumshoe does, and the problem we help solve.
Which is, I think, in today's landscape, like we spoke about earlier, extremely relevant and I would say almost prudent because I think there was a recent study shown on the use case on use volume of searches on LLMs on a daily basis. I think it's 800 million searches
It's even
a day.
higher now, according to OpenAI. That's up. They're now saying it's 2 billion a day. No, it's astronomical. And in many ways, what's interesting is from just a general landscape perspective, why are we seeing this shift? Well, AI actually solves a lot of the problems with traditional search. So, one, AI personalizes the answers. When you log in and create an account, for good or bad, AI takes your email and looks you up and builds a profile of you. They want to understand who you are. And we see vast differences in the types of recommendations that AI is giving to different types of consumers. For instance, we use an example of Lululemon, and one target customer that they get recommended to is the persona, and we help develop these and understand, pull these out of AI for marketers, is called a corporate wellness warrior. It's your classic, it could be you, right? It's called, a mid-career professional woman who likes brands and the best, and like it makes total sense, right? They like Lululemon, they like Nike, they like, right, the best brands for the best reasons. And then Lululemon gets recommended to this customer segment, this persona, over 80% of the time. Well, at the other end of the spectrum, there's another one called sustainable fitness advocate. And this is more your influencer, a little more leading edge, a little bit more hippie, and they want sustainable fabrics. Well, Lululemon doesn't make sustainable fabrics. They make stretchy nylon things. And right, you're smiling, and you're right. So they only get recommended to that group 15% of the time. And challenger brands like Girlfriend Collective have really started to invest in sustainable fabrics, now get recommended like 60% of the time to this secondary persona. And so so AI is clearly personalizing, unlike traditional Google search, where we all got the same rankings. It's truly personalizing an answer. So that's one reason AI search is taking off. The other thing that AI search does a really good job at is how many times have you just needed a simple answer, like you bought a new television and you want to hang it on the wall, and you just need to know the damn dimensions, like how many damn centimeters is wide is the damn television, so I don't know whether to fit in the spot on the wall or not. And you go type it into Google, and like all you see is top 10 this and top 10 that, and the results are so gained, you can't just find a simple, all I want is the damn Sony website with the damn product spec, right? So what AI does a really good job of is trying to find the right piece of information, not the most popular. Google search rankings are really it's like voting for your high school prom king or queen, right? Who was the most popular kid in high school? That's what traditional SEO is basically to this point, where a backlink is a vote. And because we look up the traditional Google ranking of content cited by the models, and the 50 to 90% of the links that AI recommends have a traditional Google rank higher than 21. And what that means is they're on page 3 or beyond of the search results. So what AI is doing, it's doing a really good job of finding like the buried correct piece of information and surfacing it to users, not the most popular. So it's giving a better answer as a result. And then the last piece of information, like why is, again, AI doing a better job, and really what's driving this growth is that AI is doing a much better job of surfacing newer content. So not outdated things, where traditionally Google's content was something that had been kind of marinating for 12 to 18 months. The average age of published date of a piece of content from AI is only 86 days old in our data set. And it's decreasing, getting closer and closer to real time. We've all seen these, right? You go into ChatGPT and you see it doing a real-time internet search. It's looking for the most recent information because it's most likely the most up-to-date and correct information. So that combination means I'm giving a much better user experience for people looking for things. And so they're finally solving all the complaints we've had about Google search, AI search fixes. And so that's what's really attracting this tremendous growth in AI search.
That's actually a very clearly boiled down way of looking at it, because when these kind of conversations have come up in the past, a lot of or clients will say, well, how do I make sure I actually surface a part of that search within AEO? And you just hit the nail on the head. Essentially, you put it way better than I could have. But essentially making sure that you hit those key points, making sure that your content is recent, which means you have to be posting quite frequently, right? So it's updated and recent, but also making sure that there are certain other aspects of how do you sub verticalize your other personas to really pull those levers, right? Because when I think when you look at Google as a search engine and the services that or businesses that they recommend, like you said, super generalized, and then you have to go and click more links to find out, well, how are they actually going to help me, right? It's more of a directory. Like we have something called the white pages. It's just a directory, and that's what Google and Meta is. But the one thing about the Google search and the engine is the amount of money that businesses have to pay to even be featured on any of the top 4 or 5 pages is astronomical, right? So if anyone's got to be scared of this particular strategy, it would have to be Google and Meta.
They are, and it's I think it's going to be fascinating to see the impact of this transition, right? We don't know what ads are going to be yet in AI. And I agree with you, if your business relying on Google or Meta, and it's been less of a factor on Meta, but it's definitely impacted Google. I have plenty of businesses I talk to who are interested in AI search because they're seeing not just organic declines, but paid. Like there's not as many paid clicks as there used to be either, because Google is surfacing its own AI answers ahead of paid listings. And so if you're a marketer or someone on the GTM side who's relied on paid, it's scary, just as scary as folks who relied on organic right now.
Except you're paying quite a dear price for it nowadays. So, I mean, on the back of that, then, because obviously with Gumshoe being at a certain stage within the GTM, who would you say would be your ideal customer when it comes to actually adopting Gumshoe on a serious note? Is it sort of more enterprise marketing firms, agencies, founders, or what sort of signals tells you that they're ready for Gumshoe?
No, it's a good question. We've been lucky through that self-serve PLG motion, which has meant more of an organic inbound. So we've had over 7,500 people have signed up for Gumshoe in the last year. And and we've seen pockets of all of what you described. But I think the primary one that we've seen more and more is that it's really service providers, agency, who are servicing like a growth marketer, an owner of a business, founder. And I think we started to see early on more of the founders and business owners and product owners signing up, and then realizing very quickly that there's a lot of work here, updating all that content and thinking about it and strategizing, updating your website to make sure it's crawlable, making sure you've got the right content, speaking to these different personas in terms of how AI thinks about your business. And very quickly, we saw, I think over the last 6 months, it switched to service providers, who are the ones who really need to hold a hand and do the work for these groups and companies. And so typically we might see someone, call it company direct, sign up, but eventually we tend to see more and more. We've had over 1,000 agencies sign up for Gumshoe, and they could be search agencies, content agencies, PR agencies, digital agencies, web agencies, you name it, and even a bunch in ANZ, interestingly enough. But it's in part because I think on the creative services side, which is fundamentally what you want to call content, agencies typically have a strong role in supporting businesses of all sizes to execute once you to identify sort of what do I need to do and why. Like the analytics side of it leads into, oh, what's the outputs? What's the content I need to start doing? How do I need to start speaking to the LLMs? And so it tends to be, nowadays, agencies are the primary way that most users are probably interacting with Gumshoe. You can sign up direct if you wish, but we're seeing more and more from the execution side of it. Agencies have a much bigger role in terms of helping companies figure out how they implement what they should be doing.
I think a lot of it is to do with convenience because they're probably already engaged with an agency to do front end marketing or creative marketing from the get-go, right? So they're like, oh, well, can you actually help us out here as well? And they're like, sure, we'll look into it. So that makes a lot of sense. But then it means that the pathway to get to Gumshoe is a lot less frictional for them, right? So that's a very interesting way of looking at it as well. One last question for you, Todd, as we wrap up. And this is sort of more 26 and beyond, but how are you thinking about growth from here? Is it the bigger challenge within education, distribution, CP clarity, or sub ICV, category creation, or what's the real sort of bottleneck you see for the growth in 26 and beyond?
So it's a good question. One of the things that I think we have to do an even better job is we're getting people to sign up. And I think we started, talking about how hard it is to get new prospects, to identify them, to get them to respond. They're getting overwhelmed. Even when people sign up, their inboxes now are so inundated with all these life cycle trigger emails that one of the things that I started doing is I started connecting on LinkedIn with every user I could find. because they weren't responding to emails like lifecycle emails. Like, we're trying to nurture you, we're trying to grow you, we're trying to help you leverage our product, which again will generate more money as a result of that increased lifetime value. The more you're using the platform, the more things I can ultimately sell you. And so we had to find, like, I had to like use LinkedIn DMs as a mechanism to get my users to respond. Like, I need feedback and what's working, what's not, and how do I schedule sort of advanced demos and advanced onboardings and things like that. And so for us, growth is, I think, how do you unlock lifecycle management in a world as well where people are overwhelmed, and more asynchronous tools, more education, and we have a lot of features and functions, but it's so hard to get to communicate to people. They're so busy, they're so overwhelmed that we're going to be spending a lot more, I think, on asynchronous lifecycle management outside of the inbox. That's kind of a big emphasis for us, I think, as we're looking to grow, which is, okay, they've signed up. Just because they've signed up doesn't mean I've figured out the whole life cycle and the whole relationship. And so I think we're going to find is that as SaaS apps and platforms, we're going to have to focus more on how do you manage education in a world where your customers are overwhelmed, even post sale.
So it's not really even about front end, it's more about actually not so much retention per se, like you said, education, but also, I guess, from an operational and CSM standpoint, is how I understood that.
Yes.
But I mean, that's the nature of SaaS, right? You went to GTM, got heaps of users, which is great. Now, how do we keep them, and how do we sell
Right.
more to them?
How do you do more? Because I think what's happening now is deals get signed more of a POC and entry level, and it's, land and expand becomes so much more important. I think that's customers' preferred methodology. Is you're not likely going to win the big $2 million, enterprise-wide contract up front. You win the POC at 10 to 50 grand, and that gets you the department deal at 100 to 250. And then if that goes well, then in year 3, you might get the enterprise deal, the $2 to $10 million enterprise deal. And so I think that lifecycle management is going to be so much more important in this new world, especially with, by the way, there's a million competitors showing up every day trying to steal those people away, that it's going to be even harder to get from POC to department deal to enterprise deal than it ever was.
Yeah. Um, That's a very interesting point, especially with all the new tools released on a daily basis. It would be interesting to see how Gumshoe really tries to resolve that all. Hopefully, we can have you here in a later stage and see how that all landed. This was a sharp and sort of really profound episode, especially around how AI is reshaping hiring, signaling, and the way we think about attention within B2B. If you're listening and you want to learn more about Gumshoe and how AI search is shaping brand perception, we'll link everything down below in the show notes, and we'll obviously link directly to Todd as well. Keep building meaningfully. Also, Todd, thank you so much.
Happy to be here. Thank you.